the International Conference on Agriculture and Forestry.
I'm Nyantakyi from Ghana. I'm talking about cocoa. Actually, in Ghana, previously it was being driven by the agriculture. Ghana is a developing country which was being driven by agriculture. Unfortunately, today it's being driven by the service sector, which is now killing the agricultural sector. And then came again the second one, which has completely and totally eradicated almost agriculture, is the oil that we found, which we are now mining since 2010. So our agricultural sector is dying out. And in order to find out the ways by which the government can help these people or to motivate these people to come back into the agricultural state, because for a developing country, you cannot survive on this mother sector. You need your base, which is the agriculture. That is why today I'm here with a topic modeling the causal effect of cocoa price and production of cocoa in Ghana. Because cocoa used to be the biggest in our sector and in the agricultural sector in Ghana. So if it's dying today, then we need to look at how it can be, methods, results, and then the discussions. I'm a student at the PGIA, University of Peradeniya, PhD in Statistics and Economics. Right. Most of you have heard Ghana, but they don't know where Ghana is. The most important crops in the economy of Ghana, it contributed about 3.4% to the total gross domestic product annually, and an average of 29 to the total export revenue between 1990 and 1999. And this was captured by ANOM in 2001. Then in terms of employment, cocoa sector employs about 60% of the national agricultural labor force. So if it's being killed today, then look at the effects. For production, Ghana is reported to be the second largest producer in the world, accounting for about 21% of the total production in the world, and that was captured in 2006. Production levels of Ghana's cocoa have consistently declined from 568 metric tons in 1965 to the current state, which is in 1998. And then generally, productivity of Ghana yields per hectare of land in the country is among the lowest in the world. Although we are the second leading, but the productivity per hectare is the lowest among all, telling you how fertile our soil is. The highest productivity of cocoa is Malaysia, which has about 1,800 kilograms per hectare, followed by Ivory Coast, which is 800 per hectare, while it is 360 per hectare in Ghana. Many researchers have attributed this problem to low application of fertilizer, unfavorable climatic conditions, smuggling of cocoa to the neighboring countries. But then, we think price, which is an incentive to these farmers, is often overlooked. And since Ghana's cocoa sector is a price taker, the world cocoa price goes a long way to influence the farmers' behavior towards farming practices, which to an extent affect production, producers' price, export earnings, and other factors. Inability of the world cocoa price creates significant risk to the producers, suppliers, governments, consumers, and parties that are involved in the cocoa sector. And this was captured by Opoku in 2009. The problem of price volatility or fluctuation is particularly decisive for Ghana due to the heavy dependence on cocoa exports for foreign exchange earnings. Thus, a study that will examine the influence of the world cocoa price on production will be very useful for policy making and the decisions by the government. Therefore, we look for a data, which is a secondary data, to do our analysis to see the effects of world market price So the data that we have is a secondary data. And looking at the secondary data, you can see that the data is a time series data. Although we have a causal effect, which normally has to use a regression analysis. But once we have a time series data and we want to use a regression analysis, that means we're going to face some problems with the error systems in the regression equation. And in order to face that problem, or in order to get solution to that problem, that is whereby we are proposing the regression with ARIMA errors, so that it will capture the time series nature of the errors, and then we can predict correctly and nicely, so that the government can use this to help ourselves. So, as usual with our normal regression equation, the multiple regression equation we have there, and then out of this regression equation, these errors that will occur because we are using a time series data is forcing us to use the ARIMA errors to predict it. So using the normal equation, which we have the normal errors, we expect the mean to be 0, we expect the standard deviation to be constant. All this happens. So then we have to test the data to see whether we cannot use directly the regression equation, and therefore we need to resort into the use of the ARIMA, which will help us to estimate the errors that is occurring within the equation. So in the regression analysis, those variables were tested, and then we used the normality test to see whether it is wrong. Yes. So once we found that the data was responding, there was correlation within the errors, then we decided to name the error term, which was the ET, to be NT, so that we can regress that together, and then we can predict using both equations to do that. And in order to do that, we formulated those two equations, the regression part at the top, and then the ARIMA part at the bottom. So we have these two equations. So then, when we estimate the regression, we use the error, which is NT, to do the estimation for the second one, the time series part, and then we can use both to do the prediction. So we differentiate the equation for the ARIMA 1-1, and then we use the forecasting. Now here we use the statistical software R to do the forecasting. So when we did the test, we used Dickey-Fuller to test whether we have the stationarity. And then using the Dickey-Fuller, we realized that yes, we have correlation in the errors, and therefore it is appropriate for us to go and use the differencing, which will pull us into the regression, the time series part of it. So then we did a time series analysis, and we had the ARIMA part being 220. So if you look at the table that we have down there, we estimated using the regression equation, and then we had for the coefficient of the world price, we had 52.51, and then the standard errors was 25.23. And then we did the time series. We differenced the time series twice, and we had for the first, the coefficient is negative 0.92 with errors of 0.13, and then we had the second is negative 0.42 with errors of 0.13, and then that has the least AIC, so we chose this equation. Then we do the various tests that needs to be done whenever you want to accept an equation to be fixed. So we use the Union box to do the text, and then we realize that yes, when we difference it twice, then we saw that the errors were uncorrelated. So it's good. And then again, it passed also the normality test, which helps us to accept the equation. So writing down the equation, we have the equation written down as production, which is given by 52.51 times the world price with the time series error, which is NE, and then that gave us the second equation when we estimate the time series part, which is second difference of the time series. Right, so here, then we were able to conclude that since it has a positive sign, the coefficient has a positive sign, It means that when the world market price increases, then production as well is going to increase, which means that the farmers are going to be motivated when there is increase in price. They are motivated, and therefore they will keep farming. Then when it is negative, then it's also going to affect it because it's going to reduce production because they are demotivated. So we try to predict for the previous, for 2011 and 2012, since we had the data, we try to predict to see the errors, if there are much errors. Then we can see whether the equation was good or not. So in predicting, we found out that the first table shows the actual values that was recorded by the government, which is 10.24.554. And then we use the regression part to predict, and we had 3.55453.5. And then the ARIMA errors for that prediction also gave us 10.23872.6. So when we add up, we see that there is an error of 681. There is an error of 681. Then we predicted again for 2012. And under the 2012, we had 8793. The actual was 879348. And then the forecast, using the regression alone, was 370604.5. And then the errors prediction also gave 1018889.1. Then we sum the two because we are using the two equations to do our prediction. And then we had an error difference of 139541.1. And then we looked at the mean average percentage error to see whether it is good prediction or not. And upon that, we had 0.06%. 0.06%, which means it's a very good equation that we can use for the prediction. And then for the 2012, we had 15.867. Now when you average the two errors, then we have only 7.97%, which is good. Right. So we accepted the equations that we had, that they are good for using them for prediction. Then again we said, okay, let's use only production to check. Let's use only production without the world market price to check if that prediction was okay. And then using the production alone, we saw that it was an MA of 2.1. But then look at the error there. We have an error of about 16%, as opposed to 7.97, which means using the world market price to predict is far better than using only the production side to predict. So in conclusion, and then once the government, we have these predictions, the government can use this to make some policies. In fact, if you can predict, then the government can even do hedging on the prices. But once you can predict how much you're going to get in the end, you can do hedging on the prices. And then the government can also decide, okay, I will subsidize. I will even give you advance money, loans, to do whatever that you want in order to increase production in the system. Right. Thank you very much. Okay.